So you call it a pullover, which is exactly what it is. But it's funny because most people just say t-shirts, but pullover in Miami growing up, and this is the weird thing about growing up in Miami, that the word pullover is typical of Miami. However, they use it in Spanish, and me growing up, it's a weird thing. There's no delineation for a person like me and of my generation, where you're raised American, but you have all the Spanish, things involved. So the word pullover, because you just mentioned it right before I pressed over here, I'd hear my grandparents say, pullover. Buy that pullover. Pullover. And I always thought pullover meant t-shirt. And it wasn't until years later, and this is an example of many things. And I just imagine where I thought the name for t-shirt in English, in Spanish was pullover. And yet they're just using that, English word, but they're just saying it, amongst their, and I always thought it was, and that's one example of a ton of, like my grandmother used to say, oh, look, we're passing by Furnituri Wooded House. And I'd look, and at that point I would read it, Furniture Waterhouse. And she'd say, Furnituri Wooded House. And, and it was a joke amongst us and stuff. So I started learning that a lot of the words that they used were borrowed from English and rehashed into the Spanish in a Miami way. So it's a very Miami thing. So it's a weird positioning that one starts learning, oh, wait a second, that's not really how that came about. Oh, this and you spend a certain amount of time growing to understand that, because you're in a mix of cultures.
But when I said pullover when we were talking back in the green room, what I meant was a sweater without buttons.
Oh.
Just a nice long sleeve sweater without buttons. To me, that's always been a pullover.
But you could call a t-shirt a pullover.
You could, but I've always called it a t-shirt. But
because it's literally a pullover. Put your pullover on. It's totally acceptable to say that. However, I call it a t-shirt, and it's typical to call it a t-shirt. But you could say, but they acquired the word either in Cuba, more than likely in Cuba, because the connection to business and items and sales and this and that. So a word that was brought to them in English, they just take it and frickin' put it in. They'd integrate it into their parlance. They'll just mix it up in there.
That's all we've done. That's all we've done in English. English, I don't remember who it was. Somebody said that English was basically a Germanic language that stole a lot from the Latins and rifles through the pockets of other languages in search of unused verbs. So, it because that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're totally right. So, like words like algebra and arithmetic and such, they all come from the Arabs. That was brought from the Middle East into Spain, and from Spain it was propagated out through their books and stuff. I've learned that in the past year, a lot of these words, and they went to France, and then the French took it, and since it was a scientific sort of thing, maybe the common practice wasn't to use those words because nobody cared. It was just the studied people, let's say, but eventually it arose. So it's all a hodgepodge of word, we use a lot of French words as well and stuff. But it is an interesting thing that you said pullover, and I picked up on that.
Well, we better be careful. We need to go ahead and acknowledge the fact that this is our special Happy New Year edition, because we want to be rid of 2020 just as lickety damn split as we can. Edition of the Trampled Underfoot podcast, and your time starts now. But it's weird that we got off on this tangent because I'm a word nerd. I am that guy. And you talk about borrowing words from other languages and taking words like algebra from Arabic and what have you. We had also the Anglo and Saxon influence And it was the Battle of Hastings. I think I brought it up before, the Battle of Hastings, that changed the English language, in that we had words for cow, but the Saxons and the Normans, they had other words for the same animal, but they called it beef.
Yeah.
Well, we anglicized it to beef. It was beef or something like that. And so now we have accepted the fact that the cow is the animal, beef is the food you get from it. Same thing with pig and pork. You know,
Yeah.
it was.
We don't eat pig, we eat pork.
We eat pork, exactly.
However,
So-
it wouldn't be necessarily wrong. I mean, it wouldn't be traditional, but it wouldn't be technically wrong to say that we're eating pig tonight, folks.
Well, I've said it, and I will continue to say it. I took my name for that delicacy from the Justin Wilson's Louisiana Cookin' Homegrown Cookbook, and he just calls it PIG hog. and I will. I'm fixing to throw this chunk of PIG hog on the smoker, something like that. Say it all the time. Anyway,
so you're right. We should acknowledge that this is our New Year's special.
This is our New Year's episode of the Trampled Underfoot podcast. You'll notice my display name is Three-Peat. This is the third time in 2 weeks we have attempted to get a complete episode out.
Yeah.
So only time will tell if third time's the charm or 3 strikes and you're out. You folks be the judge.
Yeah. We've had some serious technical issues, and I'll just mention, and by the way, I want to say that it's a complicated thing to say. It's an easy thing to say, but it's a complicated thing to say. When the wonderful thing about a gift is the self-realization that should happen. I mean, it could happen at any time in your life, the realization of the value of what's being done. But I've always known as a kid, when a gift was given, be it my parents or that the attached thing to it is an appreciation and an acknowledgement to the person that, hey, I think of you, and the importance of that. It's a very special. But as an adult, one starts to really put things together and starts to understand it, the deeper thing of it. And so Mark did a really cool thing, and he sent me a gift. He knew I was screwed with the internet and sent me a router. And the funny thing is that, so the act of the router solving that problem is one thing, obviously, but what it means is beyond the router, which is a very special thing. So I do want to acknowledge my co-host,
Wow.
which you honor me doing that deeply. So I just wanted to say at the end, I don't want to ruin it also, because we're at the end of the year, and anything positive could just go down the toilet. I got to be careful.
Well, you're welcome, but I think that's just what friends do. And you were in need, and it was something that I could do. I'm just glad I was able to do it.
I'll tell you, dude.
You're welcome.
Well, yes, I'm very appreciative of it, and the thing is that for everybody out there, my internet would fluctuate, and for people 200 years from now, they probably will have electronic, like, specialized implants in their heads, and they won't need any connection because it'll be automatic, like, beam me up. But in today's world, we have these gizmos called routers and modems and such, which I am no expert in, but you can have great, and here's the trick, you can have great download speed, which means essentially you can receive from the internet video, audio, and all the good stuff, and it can keep you entertained. And for most people, they're not uploading stuff, and they're not doing, at least currently, necessarily things like this that we do, like chatting. But I had more or less the normal upload speed, download speed where I could receive information, but the going out part of it was totally tanking to the point where I was like roboting in speech and such. And so, and the amount of frustration, without the internet, I know we've talked about this, but the internet is something, if they really wanted to mess with us, you know how all these, this has been a year, all these conspiracy, if they really wanted to screw things royally, wouldn't they just, and I hate to see, I don't want to, because I don't want to jinx it, wouldn't they just freaking flip the switch and say, screw all y'all, and that's it? Wouldn't they do that? Wouldn't that be the ultimate, like, catastrophe bomb?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, just a few years ago, I say just a few years ago, it was 20, 25 years ago now, when I was in the Army, I used to say, if the Russians really wanted to take over the United States, all they'd have to do would be invent a bomb that would melt paper, because the government would cease to function without paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
Now all they need is, we made it easy for everybody. Now all they need is an electromagnetic pulse. The minute you get rid of the electronics, there's nothing. There's nothing. Nothing exists.
You couldn't have, the government would have some hard drives encased in like lead.
Well, but you still need the electricity to power it. That's what I'm getting at. Without the electronics, there's nothing. There's nothing on paper anymore. Nothing's written down.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not a doomsday kind of guy, but I know this is really a happy New Year episode, but I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I was noticing earlier today a few posts on Facebook that one of the streaming services has stopped accepting a feed from a network,
mm-hmm.
because that network is starting its own streaming service.
Okay.
So you have Amazon has a streaming service,
mm-hmm.
YouTube has their own, Hulu is out there, Netflix. You've got all these different streaming services out there competing with one another. And I said a couple episodes back that I think we're starting to see the demise of the cable television networks. The cable television era may be ending, and cable would just be used for broadband internet access. But I'm starting to wonder if the cable television companies, because they're starting to do their own streaming services,
mm-hmm.
but are they going to start backing away from television? Because I mean, if we stop and think about it, you can do Netflix, you can do Hulu, you can do all these different streaming services, but they all have a monthly fee that they charge.
Right.
And so you're limited. I mean, most folks would be limited in the number of streaming services they can afford to get.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the future of cable TV, in that you have one service that packages all of these streaming services through their service? And now you can pick and choose. Now you can watch something from Netflix, and then watch something from Hulu, and then watch something from Spectrum or from Discovery Plus or something like that, all on this one virtual streaming service now.
I'm all about choice as far as everything, just about. Mm-hmm. Because when the reason cable at the beginning was popular is because you'd get some stuff that you wouldn't get on regular old TV, and people my father got the cable, and it was that sort of brick that looked like wood and had those little buttons that you'd press down and go click, click, and it would change the thing. You just sit there clicking, and it was all crap anyhow, but just the same. People want choices, and I think that if they're out to get your money, which is kind of like what they're out to get, and people want on demand whatever it is they're interested. If you're a cooking enthusiast and you want your cooking channels left to right, up and down, you should have the ability to focus, because that's where you're going to want to be. They want you to be engaged. I'm totally down with that idea. That's more
well, and that was part of the appeal of cable TV. You're absolutely right there. The reason we got cable in the San Francisco Bay Area was because the Bay Area was so spread out and transmitters were on different mountaintops. If we wanted to watch Channel 7 from San Francisco, we had to aim our antenna one direction. If we wanted to watch Channel 5, we had to move over in another direction slightly to get it, you know? So we got cable because we'd get excellent reception all the time.
Yeah.
And then they started adding channels. And like we were in the San Francisco Bay Area, they added channels from Monterey down the coast from us and Sacramento out in the valley. So you had those added bonuses there. So, excuse me. And this was before HBO. This was before Showtime, any of that stuff. That eventually started creeping in. You had the special movie channels and stuff like that. And then Ted Turner broke the barrier on the cable only network. He wasn't broadcast TV anymore. That was, TBS and then eventually CNN and all that other good stuff. And then the cable TV explosion. But I'm wondering if that isn't just the next rebirth of cable is going to be the conglomeration of all of these streaming services that you pay one subscription fee monthly and you have access to all of those.
It's better than having pre-programmed, they feed you, spoon feed you, because I don't know if my temperament, actually, I'll go out on a limb and say that all of us are an example of people that want their interested, whatever they're interested in, and they want it now. That's why the internet is so. Yeah. I don't know. Could they compete with the internet? Because
I think so. I think so. And the reason I say they could compete with the internet, well, it would be internet based, number one, through your smart TV. But they would be able to collate and they'd pay a fee to like Netflix or to Hulu or whoever. They would pay a fee to them, but they would also be able to pay a fee to like the BBC over in the UK to bring their programming in.
Gotcha.
Or stations up in Canada and bring their programming in. Because of the internet, they no longer have to lay that transatlantic cable to get over to the UK to get BBC. They can now get it online. And all they have to do is pay the licensing fee, and we could be watching stuff from ITV or BBC or whatever.
Yeah, because currently what these cable companies are doing is that they're providing the internet, they're providing the cable,
right?
And they have a third thing. I don't know if yours has it, but you could go on our Xfinity here in this area onto their website, and you could drop down on the list and do the stream, Xfinity stream, and you could stream movies for free, movies galore that you. It's kind of like a Netflix within Xfinity.
Yeah, we have that on. I'm on Spectrum, and we have On Demand here, and they've got a big list of movies and shows that you can watch, and it changes. The movies change every month, or on a rotating basis. It's not like, oh boy, it's January 1st, new movies. I mean, they'll play one movie for like 2 weeks, and then they drop that, and then bring in something else.
But will they have lists of movies?
Yes.
Okay.
They have lists, and you can get them whenever you want. Like you can go in right now and you can watch Raiders of the Lost Ark right now. Yeah. And then, Temple of Doom, and then Last Crusade. And if you really, really have to, Crystal Skull. But, but, out of all those movies, just my opinion here, Mark's opinion, nobody else's. Temple of Doom was a dog. Crystal Skull was okay.
I'm with you on that.
I mean, I rank them. Actually, I think The Last Crusade was the best one, then Raiders, the original, then Crystal Skull, and then Temple of Doom can just, let's forget about it and never speak of this again.
It's a funny thing. I would rate them the same way. I don't. Although Raiders and the Lost Ark, or the Lost Ark,
The Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then
Crusades, the Last
and the
Crusade.
Last Crusade. Yeah,
I would rate it's a toss up between those two, only because the first one was the first one and it had some cool stuff going on. But to me, yeah, I would rate the whole series in that fashion as well.
Yeah, but you can go in right now and you can turn that on and watch it. You could start with number 1 right this minute. You're not on their schedule. I have a feeling that that's the way. So cable is having to change and having to morph and reinvent itself to suit the watching habits of the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, the streaming services are going to have to as well. Right now, they're still kind of in their infancy, in that everybody, just like 20 years ago, everybody was creating a cable network. Now everybody's creating a streaming service, but they're going to quickly realize that people can only afford so many. And somebody, and I have a feeling it's going to be one of the cable companies, because they're the only ones that really have enough money, are going to start doing that and offering that as part of a package, and start stepping away from network television and a few other, the independents. A lot of the independent channels are already dropping. They're already going away. And as networks like Discovery, they're doing Discovery Plus, which is their own streaming service, they're going to start backing away from cable as well. They've already got channels that are streaming only. They're not even offered to the cable networks.
I don't find cable appealing at all. I don't care what they have on. If it's not me press the button when I feel like pressing the button and watching it, I don't. And obviously I do that because I have that option. If we were stuck in the 80s, well, I'd be like everybody else, waiting for the Dukes of Hazzard to come on, and waiting. But since we have the option, that all that stuff is like, screw that. I want to pick and choose see, look, I don't cover it up. I'm honest about it. I want what I want, and it sounds selfish. I want what I want, when I want it, how I want it. I want to watch it at the moment exactly. Like, that's it. That's what I want.
And that's the beauty of the on-demand thing, is you can watch it when you want to watch it. If you want to get up at 2:30 in the morning and put on the first Harry Potter movie, you can do it. It's streaming. And you decide when it starts. You can pause it and go make breakfast, come back, sit down, and start it up again.
Dude, it's like
where you left off.
It's like leaving the Stone Age of entertainment into this like renaissance. The internet, to me, is a renaissance.
Yeah.
It's a renaissance, dude. It's a renaissance beyond all expectations, because I'm only limited. I know we've said this before, but I'm only limited by my freaking ability to type my curiosities into the freaking thing.
And that's a problem. And to me, that is a problem, because there is so much in the world. We're only just discovering how much in the world there is to discover out there. And with so many choices, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But then again, you can fall down rabbit holes, and I'm an expert at falling down rabbit holes. I tell you what, I really am. I'm watching some guy in Canada build an international truck, four-door pickup. He put it on a newer Dodge chassis. And there's a couple people out there that I think probably know who I'm talking about. I don't care about international trucks. I don't care about Dodge chassis. I don't care about it, but it's cool to watch him build this thing. And I'm not the only one. This dude's got thousands of subscribers. I'm watching a guy back in North Carolina who was an absolute wizard fabricator. He took an old trenching machine for cutting trenches in the ground to lay pipe in and stuff like that. It had a little blade on it as kind of a to keep, to rebury that trench in, and to kind of keep it steady, to push back against if you were trenching real hard dirt. he cut the trenching part of it off, turned around, and he's made his 7-year-old grandson a miniature bulldozer. Painted it yellow. The thing is gorgeous. It looks cool as heck. And world's coolest grandpa. Yeah, you're doing it right.
There's
But
so many cool things.
I'd never be able to see something like that if it weren't for the internet. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Dude, absolutely. Like, so in my on my side of the thing, as an example, I spent a fair amount of time watching a debate. It's just the crazy things that you're into whatever you're into, or you don't know you're into it until you're stuck watching it. It could be like I don't know, what do you call it? Those as seen on TV things or whatever. You could spend a whole lifetime on, and it is what it is. I spent a whole time there sitting watching a debate between creationists and scientists, and the debate, and I was watching it because it's what I want to know. I'm watching it and watching it and watching it with Bill Nye, the science guy, and then there was this other guy with the Creationist Museum. And hey, I'm sitting there, and you can see the numbers. There's like 75,000 other people that had watched it, and so people are interested in all sorts of stuff that other people might not have come across.
And that's the fascinating thing about it, is you don't know what's going to hit. You don't know what's going to be that one thing that folks are just going to grab hold of and love. I sent Eloy a couple days ago. I sent him a link to a guy's video. Him and his dad went on a road trip along Highway 50 through the Nevada desert, and they stopped at a couple of towns. They stopped in Carson City, where I worked and where my parents lived. And then they stopped in a little town called Dayton that we used to live in, and took a few shots talking about the town and this, that, and the other. And I worked there. That big piled up rock sign that they had there that said Dayton, that's right across the street from the first casino I worked at, and then they went out to this other place, and they stopped because it had a funky looking water tank out front. And that was a mile away from the last house we lived in, the old Oasis Casino and Stagecoach. And him and I had talked about this forever.
And was that place, that was when he visited it, it was closed down?
It was closed down when we lived there too.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. It looked identical to that. It has not changed. And we left there 8 years ago.
So it's just sitting there.
Yeah. It's just sitting there.
Okay.
So, but I sent him a link to it. Hey, check it out. This is where I used to live. And I explained a few things about it. That's the beauty of this stuff, man. You can find weird stuff like that and then share it with your friends and all that. I'm preaching it. I'm preaching to the choir, and I know it. I just think it's cool.
No, we are. Okay. So listen, we are all of us of this time, even though we are of other times in the past, but we are truly of this age in that, look how quickly, I don't know about you guys out there, you tell me, but I suspect, look, I am so confident about this, and I could be wrong, but I'm so, look how quickly, within the past 10, 15 years, whatever the time is, we have completely embraced with loving arms this whole new technology, which another example is that I take it for granted until my freaking internet went on me, and then I started worrying about routers and this and that. But when it's working, I'm like, dude, I'm going to investigate freaking this. I'm going to investigate that. I'm over here. I'm over there. Right. We have embraced this. We are of this era. So
that opens up a question. Now we're at the end of 2020. So we've got a second hose, and we're about ready to put out this dumpster fire.
We've been hosed. We've been hosed real good.
We've been hosed good this year. But this whole COVID thing notwithstanding, what do you think is next? Do you really see continued advancements in technology? Do you think things are going to kind of mellow out and just kind of become the norm? Or do you see things going backwards? Where do you see us going in the next 5 years? What do you think is going to be the next big thing? That's what I'm getting at.
I don't know how long we're going to continue in this trajectory. We have a population of about 7.8 or is it 8.7 billion people. There's around 8 billion people in existence on this planet currently. That's a truckload of people. That's not even a truckload of people. That's
A couple of truckloads.
that's beyond truckloads, but that's a lot of people. And all these people are individual little actors. Well, they're not all little, but they're individual actors in that they're guiding their decision making on what they focus on. And it could be as simple as a guy in their garage creating the next water dehydration salinity balanced cartridge that holds whatever. I just threw a bunch of gobbledygook words together. They could be inventing the next big thing and multiply that by all these people. I just see that possibilities of new things are out there in droves, but I also see that how sustainable could a all-consuming society civilization event occur that will reduce the, because we had that event occur in the Middle Ages, or I'm sorry, at the beginning of the Middle Ages with the fall of Rome. There was a crash of Rome, which had the aqueducts and this, and after them, civilization continued, but there was a certain structure. Looking back, obviously we weren't there, but the people that study this stuff, where things turned into the Dark Ages, and then everything went, south.
Yeah, kind of stagnated. Yeah.
So is that within our world? I mean, we're not immune, obviously, to some sort of. We've just been living on a forward march.
We went through, in a relatively short span, we went through an industrial revolution where everything was focused on hardware all the way up till about the mid to late 90s. Everything was focused on hardware. We had the steam mills, and that allowed the creation of factories, which allowed the use of machines that made products faster than you could do it by hand. You could have a team of 20 guys running machines instead of out there with hand saws and brace and bit drills. You now had drill presses, and you now had table saws, and you had lathes, and they could put out triple the product with the same number of people. And then it started getting into electronics. Radio came along, and the entertainment industry boomed. Motion pictures, then television, then computers. In the mid 80s, the computers started taking off, until we got up into the 90s and early 2000, I want to say, when the smartphone was introduced and became super popular. And in the short time from the mid 90s, when the PC revolution just took off, and I'm not saying Mac didn't either, I'm just talking about the personal computer, took off, and entire stores dedicated to nothing but home computers opened up. Pretty soon sales started dropping off as the smartphone became cheaper and more popular. And tablets, they worked that technology out, and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Now, I mean, you're down to one shelf in a big box store. That's your computer department. Even someplace like Office Depot now has a bigger selection of printer paper than they do of home computers.
Yeah.
It's one little bitty section. So the home computer industry that boomed 10, 20 years ago is dead. And there's only a few specialized people that want home computers anymore. Us being some of them,
Well, I'm pro home computer tower.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about having I see it when you go in the sci-fi, you have your shuttle and you travel through space in that little compartment. I see the tower as I'm encased in that little spaceship and it's got everything there, as
Oh,
opposed
yeah.
to like a cell phone that you're holding. Most people use the phone as their internet.
Right.
That's their thing.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and that's what I'm getting at. We have the next thing was the PC, and then the iMac, and then the big computers, and then all of a sudden that went away, and now the smartphone is here. And all we're doing now is we're improving the smartphone, but the emphasis went from hardware to software. We're no longer really concerned about, I mean, we all want the latest and greatest iPhone or Android, but all that is it's an improvement, an incremental improvement on the ability of that device to use an application or a program. The emphasis is more on apps. Gaming is tremendous. I mean, it's beyond huge. It is just gigantic. So it's the newer hardware is there to be faster, more powerful, to be able to handle the sophistication of the games that they have out now.
Yeah.
But the emphasis is mainly on software now. We've kind of got away from hardware. I don't know how much further you can go. The appeal of the smartphone and the tablet is portability.
You got to be careful with that
Yeah,
statement.
I know, but
You know,
you still need a screen. I mean, they tried the Google Glass. It didn't really, it didn't really work. They tried the Apple Watch, which does connect, but it's still using off of your smartphone.
but wait a second. Can't
So
you?
you have to have a screen, and you have to have the ability to type, because voice recognition software still isn't all that good.
Yeah.
But I don't know currently, until the next big thing comes along. I don't know how far they can progress beyond that. I think that's why the emphasis has changed over to software, digitizing all things and putting it in the cloud so that you can stream it to your device. The device itself is less important than that ability to receive the information.
Well, that's what's going on right now, and we don't know how long this will time. But the idea of, because you could really see, like with because you had mentioned this, but we know that we have no idea, 20, 10, 20, 30 years out, no idea.
Right.
No, I mean, remember that episode where, and I think we have that on our Trampled Underfoot podcast page on the internet at trampledunderfootpodcast.com in the Wayback Machine. You'll see the image there. It's like, I think it's like a lady sitting by like a Jetsons sort of like computer and stuff. Yeah. In that episode, I think that's the one, you brought out a article from a magazine of a guy that back in the early 1900s did a prediction for this magazine about what the future would be like, and he did all these predictions about people, like food being sent through chutes and just a whole assortment of things. And his imagination was wild enough that he got certain things wrong, but it was wild enough that he got certain things right pretty darn right. So I don't know I don't know that I have as good of a imagination as that dude back then to foresee from where we're at. If he could foresee that back then, when they had frickin' horses frickin' taking, people in carriages and whatnot, and we have what we have now, I have no issue thinking that it's going to be unbelievable, the things that we can't conceive of currently, what's going to be. So I don't know how far this whole thing, the only thing that I'm worried about, and to be honest with everybody, the only thing I'm worried about, and I'm no frickin', but this is just what comes into my mind in my circumstance, I'm worried about is the leaders of this world, little incrementally through their decision making and power, doing the wrong moves and creating a situation where we go down a notch as opposed to going up.
And without making it political, that's kind of where I was going when I said, are we going to keep this trajectory of advancement going, or are things going to start dialing back? I mean, little stupid things are already happening now. It's easier than ever to spot a trend. It's easier than ever to to ride a trend, and it's easier than ever for a trend to end. I mean, case in point, the fidget spinner. They came from out of nowhere, got super popular, and then went away just as fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there was a super huge trend. Things like vinyl records are coming back. Cassette tapes are coming back.
Well, you have the vintage. You have the love.
Well, but it's a boom. I mean, yes, you have the love for the old vinyl, but there are record companies putting out vinyl now. It's not just it's not just people going to the thrift shops and finding old vinyl. It's record companies putting out new albums today on vinyl. It's come back that much. It's worth it to them to do it. So are we starting to kind of retrograde and go back? You know, or is that a fad that too shall pass? I mean, I know bell bottoms came in and out a couple of times, but what I'm getting at is are people seeing a bubble that may be getting ready to burst? And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom about the future, but I think that 2020 in hindsight has caused us to kind of reevaluate what's going on and reevaluate how dependent we have been on certain things that can't be depended on anymore, and how really dependent we are on one another. And certain things have gone away, but certain things are coming back.
Here's what I think with that you just said. We all of us here are living today right now, and we're real people with real struggles, conflicts, passions. We interact with each other. We bind ourselves through relationships. We have arguments. We disagreements, and all the things that are part of the human experience. Currently, today, all of us today here. I think that, like I mentioned before, we're so much of our time, whatever that space of time is from the beginning, and in the future, we will not be as present as we are now, as you know, but people from a future time looking back will see us like we see things from the past, with the exception that they could see us live on Trampled. Hey, isn't this the most macabre?
Yeah, it is.
Isn't this the most macabre? The most macabre sales pitch you've ever heard in your life? It's so macabre. You know, we're here alive, and it's so freaking so like we could do that now. Like people back in the 1800s couldn't say, I hope you read our adventure diaries from going out west, but not here. Here we could actually literally tell the people in the future that, hey, we're not going to be around, but guess what? It's a little macabre, pretty macabre, but so I'm stuck on that. But we'll be a moment in time.
Yes, you're right.
As far as we know, and those people will be struggling with whatever. There'll be many similar issues and this and that. So we have, just to wrap up that. So what I'm saying is that we're living in a multitude of bubbles in certain categories. This is an extraordinarily odd year in the timeline of our existence, of what we've known, even though we've had, dips and valleys and such throughout our lives, we've never necessarily experienced a year where it's so, you could turn and look to either side of you and see people that are affected by fires, explosions, disease, financial crises, just a whole bunch of things. It's really an exceptional, but I think that it's an event of our time, and that it'll continue going forward, and other people will have who knows what catastrophes await in the future. Not to be macabre.
No, you're absolutely right, but there's a few things that have come along with it, and a few things that have changed drastically. For instance, put yourself back in December of 2019. We were doing our close to the New Year's episode then. If I were to predict, and we always ask for each other for predictions, what do you think the next year is going to be like? If I was to have said by the end of next year, all the movie theaters will be closed down and 3/4 of them would be out of business and would never open again,
I couldn't believe you.
nobody would have made that prediction, but it
Yeah.
happened. So we've already seen that. We know that there are a lot of movie theaters that are never going to reopen.
Mhm.
So the summer blockbusters that used to come out every year, the adventure movies and what have you, and then the big Christmas movie boom around this time of year, it never happened. The
No.
Oscars this year are going to be very interesting because I think what, 6 movies came out? So an entire entertainment industry. Now let's talk about Broadway. Is anything even open? Are there any plays that have been going on?
I don't know.
How many of those people are out of work forever now because they had to go find other jobs, you know?
That's another failure of let's say in my case, although I realize it, I understand. Like for instance, you mentioned Broadway.
Mhm.
On a personal level,
No,
I could give
right.
a
But when you think of
flying.
but when you think about the thousands of people that were employed by that industry
Correct.
and
Correct.
the theaters themselves, you know,
Right.
and all the people that worked for the movie studios,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, everything from the guy who swept the floor after the last cut was screamed to the big stars. I mean, look at the musicians and the bands that were gigging and just trying to play the small clubs to try to get their break. They're, you know, they had to go find employment somewhere else to live because the clubs are closed down. I mean, you have some pretty big name musicians that are doing absolutely nothing and are starting to hurt because they were on the verge of a record deal. They were out touring to try to get something going and they were bringing in good prices at concerts. I mean, they were getting good gate receipt money, but that's all stopped,
Yep.
you know?
And even if they tried to make up with it by selling their 5th yacht sitting in Belize, it's going to be a tough sell at the
But,
going. So
you
it's like
know,
it's a site. It's a snowball effect.
mhm,
The whole
you know,
thing. So it is a shocking thing. I heard them say somewhere, I forget where the Spanish flu.
mhm,
I think it was the Spanish flu. It was the influenza of its time, I
yeah,
believe.
yeah,
Killed more people than that war at the time, which was I think the First World War.
yeah.
I think that
A million people. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, just think about that. The
Well,
the,
you
the,
know,
the disease killed more people than the actual war.
yeah.
I mean,
And
I don't. I think that's. I heard it said.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check on it, but you know, so many things. They're talking about reopening drive-ins. They're talking about building new drive-ins with digital projectors and uh, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to broadcast to your car stereo. I mean, sure, there'll be some old cars that still need the speakers, but when they start talking about bringing stuff from the 40s and 50s back,
Yeah.
you know, some heavy duty stuff has come along. And that leads me to go around. That leads me to go back to what I was talking about, that retrograde and stepping back and then going back to the cable network. Does that mean the big studios are going to start streaming services? I mean, is Sony Pictures and Pixar, are they going to start streaming services where they're going to start screening their big movies instead of relying on theaters and instead of relying on people to come to the theater to see it? You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
have we witnessed the death of the movie theater? Because a year ago, in December of 2019, movie theaters were still huge. They were still a big thing. People loved to go to the movies.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, and I'm not the typical. Not to put myself,
Mhm.
apart, but I don't know that I'm like the most balanced person when it comes to the standardized. Um, I don't know that I would even, like, let's say tomorrow they said the pandemic is over, folks. no problemo, let's go. And this, I don't know that I would be the one to go willy nilly and plonk my butt into one of those theater chairs
Yeah.
next to like two people hacking and coughing
And
away.
you're not the only one that thinks that way, man, because it's kind of, nobody wants to be the canary in the coal mine. Nobody wants to be that first one to go in and sit down and say, no, it's cool.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a slow recovery from all of this. And we came back a bit, and then we've kind of backed down a bit again. And we're still going to be growing. We're still going to be coming back.
Yeah.
But I think we're just going to change form. We're going to morph into something else. There's a lot of movie theaters that will not reopen. We all know that.
I mean, a lot of things. And by the way, I don't know if they were doing that great before anyhow.
Yeah, they were. I mean, you still had reports of movies that were setting box office records. I mean, bringing in criminally high, I shouldn't say criminally, but insanely high returns for a weekend, Well, yeah, so this movie over the weekend brought in $200 million. It's like, really?
No. Listen, criminally. Look, I go to the supermarket, and I'm going to sit here and tell you right now, I look at the prices and I think to myself, this is criminally freaking too expensive. All of it. You're all a bunch of criminals. That's I'm not going to sit here. Criminals.
I'm a bad judge of that because I still think a candy bar should be a nickel and a box of cereal should be, 35 cents. But, what can I say? I'm old. I remember gas at $0.25 a gallon. So,
I mean, no, but it's funny because there is I know you can't say criminal officially, but the sentiment, is like, what a highway robbery, let's say, which is actually criminal again. We're gonna have to find a word for what I know exactly what you're saying about it, but what's the word? Because it's highway robbery.
I know somebody is gonna say price gouging. Somebody is going to say price gouging, but I have a different take on price gouging. So it's an unpopular opinion, but
this is also giving a sort of like, so amongst this all these tragedies, people like, or companies like Netflix and your other companies are actually saying, hey, well, heck yeah, folks, come over here. You don't have to go anywhere. We've got all you need right here. And so it's benefiting in a way, and more people are probably subscribing to their, business model.
Restaurants that have never thought about delivery, never once thought about delivery or curbside pickup. Now it's a norm. If they want to stay open, they have to offer both. Stores are starting to deliver again. You used to be able to call up the grocer and tell them what you wanted on the phone, and it would be delivered. Well, we're getting online and we're ordering it. And we're paying for it with our debit cards or credit cards on the internet. And then we can either go down there and, text them from the parking lot, and the kid will push out the buggy. I say the kid, he's probably 38 years old, will push the buggy out and load your trunk for you. You never even have to talk to anybody, But so that was becoming more and more popular before the pandemic hit. Self-service checkout was more popular. When was the last time you went down to the bank and put your card in the ATM and got money out? Not a lot of people do that anymore. There may be some, but not a lot of people do that. It's easier to use that cash point right there at the register. Just swipe the card and be done with it. There are a lot of people have not used cash in years.
Yeah.
So it was already headed in that direction, but the pandemic just basically sealed the deal. And businesses like Amazon have just, tripled their volume. Our local post office was on the radio earlier today. Our local post office said that the number of packages they are delivering, this is the post office, has doubled over last year.
Yeah, they're making a killing.
Because people aren't going to the stores and shopping. the malls, our Rogue Valley Mall down here, the parking lot is almost deserted. I mean, there's a few people going in, but not many people are ordering stuff online and having it sent to them.
I don't even know how our mall. We've got a mall called the Dolphin Mall and International Mall.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even. Not that I used to go there anyhow. Things were expensive there anyhow. To begin with. But they had the movie theaters and bowling alleys and dining and all the good stuff and clothes and whatever. And so, but I don't even know how they're doing. I think that people in those businesses paying those thousands of dollars for rental space for their businesses and all the inventory, I think they've been kicked in the nads because all those people that say ladies buying beautiful dresses to go out in the evenings to wonderful places aren't going to those wonderful places
Right.
in the amount. So they're not going to the stores, and therefore you've got a situation. No, man, it's a serious situation.
Yeah.
It's a serious situation.
So that leads me to wonder, what do we think for next year? You have any predictions for what's going to happen? I mean, we
Yes.
could talk about the effects of COVID if you want, but or do you what do you think is going to be the next big thing next year?
I can guarantee you 100%. You hear it here. You can mark the thing.
Okay.
I have no freaking idea.
Yeah,
No idea. It can go in any direction, and the problem is that I'm not the weatherman capable of where we sit. Okay, so we could go in complete collapse, where this is unfortunate, but where our money looks like other countries, where the inflation has to skyrocket by just because we haven't paid our dues, and then our value. In other words, you go to the store and you have to pay like I don't know how much for an item. You'll have then people doing a run on banks and money shifting out to other countries and depositing in other countries in order to save people's wealth. You'll see a lot of it could go in a very terrible situation on one end. If these politicians are smart enough, and by the way, who am I to say this? But I'm just giving you my 2 cents, and I'm aware that I don't know what the heck, you know what I'm saying? But within the context of what I'm thinking. In other words, so who am I to say who's smart and who's not? But since you asked, if these politicians, they'll work out whatever to make it so that things smoothly. So if there's a loss of buying power, it's subtle, but they keep it rolling so that people we're basically, look, we're living a lie. My opinion, economically, we're all in debt. The country spends more than it takes in, and what they take in comes from us, and they need us to be healthy in order for the country to be well. And so it needs to be more balanced. So it's dangerous. They need to keep propagating it so that it's kind of like people can do their thing and feel like they can progress and the whole thing, so that the machine can keep going. Or we have that total collapse. I don't see the third option of like, woohoo, everything's wonderful, yay. I don't see that option as viable as the other two that I just said. It's probably somewhere in the middle. Like things will just keep like dragging along.
I think that's more likely. I think things are going to keep dragging along. I think a lot of small businesses are just gone. A lot of small businesses are just gone, whether it be the corner store, the corner tavern. I think a lot of the small home workshops are going to do better because the quote unquote custom market is still bigger than ever. You know, anybody can go on Amazon and order a cutting board, but not everybody can go to Amazon and order a cutting board with their family name on it.
That's right.
There are going to be people out there fulfilling those needs.
Yeah.
Small, custom projects and things like that, I think they're going to get bigger, because if this pandemic has done anything, it has forced us to be together and interact with one another more, because a lot of us just don't have the luxury of being able to get away.
Yeah, but us, We always interact online. Like
Right.
we haven't
But-
changed one bit.
Well, but Judy can't run down to go to Megan's house and they're going to swing past the Tasty Freeze on the way and get a hamburger. That's not happening. That's not happening. There are people in line at the supermarket asking other people in line, how do you cook this? People are making dinner again, and they're figuring out they need that dining room table, and they're sitting down and they're eating together and they're discussing and they're talking.
That is a good point.
Dude, board games are making a comeback. People, I'm seeing the posts online. People are playing cards again. They're discovering that their family members aren't all a bunch of idiots, and maybe they do have an interesting thing to talk about here and there. But it's few and far in between. But I think there's going to be a dramatic social change in that. I think people are getting a little bit more used to one another, but they're also hungering to get away a lot more. So there's going to be like a parting of the ways for a while and then a coming back together. But I think a lot of small businesses are just gone.
Yeah,
they are. Restaurants, pubs, taverns, microbreweries, stores, theaters. I think a lot of them are just gone forever.
The comic book industry, as I've heard, even before all this, was aching. Who knows what's going on now? But even they have done digital, so they'll release their comic books digitally. Yep. But if you're like an old school kind of guy like me, the idea of having the actual physical, there's so much more to it, and reading it on it, there's a detachment. You know, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. So I do have leftovers. Yeah, it's a tactile thing.
You have leftovers. You want that page in your hand. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if it's a documentary, you can watch it on, or a movie, But that's my personal thing. With comic books, I don't know. There's a collector's item type, thing to it as well. There's a lot of industries that are suffering, and we all are. We all are.
Sure.
On the bright side, just to add the bright side of things, I don't know if you're aware of this. I'll just throw this out. For the past year, Peter Jackson, the one that directed the movies Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, an excellent director. He's from New Zealand. He was handed over 50 some hours of footage from the Beatles, from their Let It Be session video. Footage.
Yes.
And he is working diligently to create and put out the new installment of the Beatles Let It Be sessions. And previously to that, what we had was a laser disc and a VHS version, which I owned. And it was awesome, but at the same time, the sound, you could hear John Lennon when he was singing Don't Let Me Down, the volume just jumps out of the tape and it's so loud, and the grain, and it was, well, he's working to make it, and there's hours and hours of footage that they never put out. He's tweaking that right now. So that's coming out. That's going to be good.
Cool.
Totally. That's going to be a cool thing.
It is. I've been hearing about that too. That's why that oh yes response.
That was like magic. We did it like within the context of that.
I do think we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge the passing yesterday of Leslie West, the lead guitarist and lead singer of the group Mountain, who had the big hit with Mississippi Queen way back in the day. Passed away yesterday, age 75 years old.
Oh, wow.
The rock and rollers are getting up there, man. They really are. When you think about it, just about everybody we listened to growing up is in their 70s.
That's insane.
Yeah. These people are grandparents.
Yeah, it's insane, dude. It really is insane.
So, well, our best to the family of Leslie West. Our condolences to y'all, and prayers go out to you. So you think we ought to wrap it up?
Well, I do want to mention that we are sponsored by Harneal Media, and that's harnealmedia.com. And what they do is they create websites for you. If you're whether you're a small operation or a large operation, if you get in touch with Steve, he can set that up. The prices are great. It's a personalized service, so you're talking to the person that actually will set everything up and customize it for you. So you can get in touch with Steve Nealon over at harnealmedia.com. And whether you want to sell items, he can even do that for you. Blankets, prints, shirts, coffee mugs, just a whole assortment of things. So that's an interesting way to get your business up and running during these times. So check that out. And of course, well, we have our show every Tuesday at 6:30 West Coast time, 9:30 East Coast time here on YouTube. That's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube.
Let's not forget our Facebook page. Let's head on over to the Facebooks and type into the search bar up above Trampled Underfoot Podcast. Hit enter, and that's us. We're over there. Anytime Eloy and we bring up a video or a picture or an article or a book or something like that. Yes, books. Some of us read books still. I know it's weird. Nobody's more surprised than me. Anyway, we'll post a link, a picture, a video, a song, whatever. We'll post it over there on our Facebook page so you can get your eyes on it too. So come on over there, give us a like, give us a follow. Our weekly audio podcast is also posted over there every Tuesday morning. So come on over to Facebook, to Trampled Underfoot Podcast. Give us a thumbs up and follow us.
That's right. We want to wish you guys a wonderful, I was going to say, may the next year be like, so may the next year bring you everything that you hope for, and just make sure to to keep the fire extinguisher close by, a shotgun, and food preserves in the basement. Make sure to have your oxygen tank somewhere stored, extra gas in the, just make sure all these things, okay? But
dump out the water, Ethel. The cat drinks unleaded from here on out. I'm just ready to stick a fork in 2020 and say, let's get done with it. But we can all make this joke in just a few days. Yeah. After the stroke of midnight on January 1st, 2021, we can all look back at the previous year in 2020 hindsight.
That's right.
Oh, I know that was bad even for me.
We're 20 years into the new millennium.
Yeah.
We're 20 years into it, Mark.
I know.
It's freaking bizarre, dude.
Dude, the first Harry Potter book was published 22 years ago. I still think of Harry Potter as being relatively new. It's 22 years old. And you know what else makes me feel old? So is my youngest granddaughter.
Wow. It's insane, dude. It's insane. Well, listen, guys. Just my suggestion to you is, better to do for yourself than I would. But if I had any choice in the matter, I'd say do whatever makes you happy. Enjoy the ride. And, there's good moments and bad moments. Like my mother said, life is nothing else than moments. She told me that, and you have your good and bad and stuff. And I think it'll get better. Mm-hmm. I'm lying to you desperately right now, but I want to tell you that.
In the words of Dr. Sidney Freeman, boys and girls, take my advice. Pull down your pants and slide on the ice. We're out of here.
Lots of love to you guys that we interact with. Anybody that I've ever interacted with, you guys all know, in as much or as little, I send my affection and love to you. And, I do acknowledge the fact that we share moments. So I just want to give you that message from me to you. God bless you all, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week. Okay.